Our national carrier is under fire on two fronts this morning. Qantas facing a major class action over flight credits and new pushback over Qatar being blocked from operating more flights into Australia. Let's bring in Flight Centre CEO Graham Screw-Turner from Brisbane now. Graham, good morning to you. We appreciate your time as always. You've been quite vocal on this, of course, for quite a while now. Virgin Airlines and the former ACCC boss Rod Sims are voicing their concerns on this as well. We need more competition to drive prices down, right?
Yes, Sylvia. Look, it's pretty obvious. And don't get me wrong. We have a great relationship with Qantas and Emirates. We actually sell more than $3 billion worth of their flights every year. So it's not the airlines that we're worried about. It's the way the government has acted in this, and the way Minister Catherine King has given the excuses have been pathetic on why they've knocked this back. We need more capacity. We need it for the airports need it. Obviously travel needs it generally, and as does our tourism industry in Australia. So it is really hard to understand that decision with Qatar.
Well, if you look back to 2020, I suppose Qatar has been under an enormous amount of heat, and rightly so, over their treatment of women, including 5 Australian women on that horrific flight, that terrible incident back in 2020. Does that justify this decision in your view?
Look, everything I know about that, which was a terrible incident for the people involved, it had nothing to do with Qatar Airlines. That was a police incident in Qatar at the Qatari airport. So I don't think you can blame the airline for that. It'd be like blaming airlines for what their governments do all over the world. And if that's what we did, we would have a lot less carriers coming into Australia, that's for sure.
OK, some people are criticising the government here for doing Qantas favours. Is that what's happening in your view?
Look, it's obviously a government decision. If you're Qantas or Emirates, you're just doing what's good for the business. It's the government who actually has to make the decisions on this. So it's definitely a government issue. And from what we've heard in the industry, this has probably come from the top, from the PM, to make this decision about Qatar. And sure, it benefits Qantas and perhaps Emirates. But it's not their fault. They do their lobbying and they run their business. It's really a government decision, and it's the government that needs to stand up and tell us what their rationale was, because we just haven't heard anything sensible yet.
Yeah, well, it's becoming a bit of a mess now, isn't it? Screw, I want to ask you about the Qantas flight credit situation as well. There's this big class action being launched against Qantas. There's still hundreds of millions of dollars owing to passengers over these cancelled flight credits from the pandemic. How do you see this playing out? And is it fair that there are any conditions at all attached to these credits? It's the passengers' money, right?
Yeah, look, it's a tough question. I mean, and our company has certainly copped some flack over the refunds. We've had to refund billions of dollars over the last 3 years for cancelled flights. So we certainly have some sympathy for Qantas, and they've made it quite clear about collecting, being able to use these points and that over the time. But generally, of course, because the government shut the borders down, they had no business, and none of us had any business for a couple of years, really. So, again, it was a government decision that caused this, and I do feel some sympathy for them. I'm not sure how they'll go on this, but I know Qantas is trying to get these, the points and the refunds cleaned up, but we'll see how this goes over the next few months.
Yeah, the results of that class action will be very interesting. Graham Turner, always great to get your insights. Thanks for joining us.
OK, I wanted to get Neil's thoughts on that, but I do want to get to Qantas if we can. Neil, Qantas is in seemingly hot water this morning. The airline accused of blocking competition in Australia as passengers launch a class action over losses during COVID. But more competition, you'd have to think, was good for passengers. Neil, what do you think?
No, obviously competition's good from passengers. Qantas has failed us since the pandemic, in my view. And the government's got to explain its decision on Qatar Airlines. I mean, the more you have in, the more competition you have, presumably, the better chance you have of the market doing the right thing by passengers.
Bill, why is the federal government blocking airlines like Qatar Airways from increasing flights to Australia instead of... I mean, it just looks bad.
Well, I agree with the principle that competition will hopefully force down the price of airline tickets. And I've been a critic of Qantas in the past, both in some of the things it did during pandemic to the staff. But in terms of when a particular airline applies to get more berths at Australian airports, that's a matter for negotiation. I can understand Qatar being unhappy, but as the Minister for Transport said, this is business as usual. You don't automatically get a slot just because you ask for one.
OK, I think I have a bit of a different take on this, guys, and what your thoughts on it quickly, if we can. Just a reminder that 5 Aussie women are still waiting for justice from Qatar authorities and the airline after being strip-searched and violated in the most horrible way in 2020. I think if they want to get things relaxed for them here, they need to sort that out, and we need guarantees in the future it won't happen again. Neil?
Yeah, but hang on, Carl, what about China Airlines? I mean, look what they're doing to Australian citizens in China. What about Emirates? Look what's happening with Emirates and the way, you know, if you're gay, they put you in jail. It's illegal. There are airlines flying into this country and Qantas flying into those countries which have got appalling records on human rights. And you're right about Qatar, but we'll end up banning everybody.
All right, just finally, Bill.
Oh, we're not going to end up banning everyone, Neil. And I just want to say, Neil, as you're contemplating what you do next, maybe Qatar could use you. I thought you were pretty good then.
Oh, Bill.
Guys, thank you so much. Look forward to
know
reading
I'm coming from a good place, Neil.
From all those headlines in the paper. Thank you, Neil. Love your work, mate. Don't
Have
go
I got
anywhere.
a job or not, Bill?
You have. You've got a job here for as long as you want, my friend.
Yeah, you have, mate. You have.
Okay.
I always need volunteers.
We'll take you fully paid, Neil, any day of the week. We love you.
It's not a good look for Qantas this morning as they fight a class action over flight credits and further criticism for blocking more Qatar flights into Australia. Let's go live to Mia Glover on the Gold Coast. Mia, good morning. Customers and businesses not impressed.
No, they're not, Brooke. Good morning again to you. So much so that some customers are taking class action in the federal court against Qantas, claiming that the national carrier wasn't transparent during the pandemic when we saw those flight cancellations and also those delays, which forced them to issue those travel credits. But they say when they got those travel credits, well, they came with strict conditions. So that's why they're taking this legal action. This is something that Qantas has completely rejected this morning, claiming they have paid out around $1 billion worth of travel credits so far. But the headaches don't end there for Qantas. Virgin Australia and also the Australian competition watchdog's former boss, Rob Sins, have come out absolutely slamming the federal government and Qantas over its decision to stop Qatar Airways from producing more international flights, which would ultimately mean cheaper fares for passengers. It's something Screw Turner, who is the head of Flight Centre here in Queensland, has also slammed.
From what we've heard in the industry, this has probably come from the top, from the PM, to make this decision about Qatar. And sure, it benefits Qantas and perhaps Emirates, but it's not their fault. They do their lobbying and they run their business. It's really a government decision, and it's the government that needs to stand up and tell us what their rationale was.
Qantas, of course, welcomed the decision to stop Qatar putting on more flights in and out of Oz, but Virgin Australia, like Screw says it only benefits Qantas.
OK, thanks, Mia.
Hey there, Today fans. Sarah and...
What's my name again?
Oh my goodness, Carl.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel, though. Subscribe now for more news, special reports and amazing Aussie stories.
And Carl misbehaving,
Whoa,
of course.
that never happens.
Always happens.
What's she talking about?
Always happens.